This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by OWC, PreSonus, API Audio, Isotope, Sound Porter Mastering, JZ Microphones, and Spectra 1964. And you're hearing my voice right now on the JZ BB29 microphone through the Spectra 1964 STX100 Mic Pre, C610 Comp Limiter, and Isotope RX and Ozone. So get ready to rock.
What I really found that I loved is I stopped thinking about how does this mic work with this preamp and this, thinking about my signal change so much as I'm setting up for a band. You're just like, take that out of the equation. I know I have good preamps. Like, preamps don't make great records. They wake up a mic and make it sound good, and maybe they all do it a little bit different, but you can get a great result with a great preamp. So I just like not having to think about it as much.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. I've got two words for you that will help you make your best record ever and not lose it: storage and backup. You want fast drives for composing and recording, and reliable drives for backup so you don't lose all your hard work when something goes wrong. That's why I chose OWC Mercury Extreme Pro 6G internal SSDs for my studio computer and Mercury Elite Pro external drives for archiving. Discover the best OWC drive options for your studio at macsales.com/rockstars. The Spectra 1964 STX100 Mic Pre provides unequaled headroom and linear output regardless of transient audio peaks, capturing critical details from your microphone. The 100 series amplifiers were used by Tom Dowd, Muscle Shoals, and the Record Plant on records by ZZ Top, Aerosmith, and John Lennon. Now you can get that same incredible sound in your studio at Spectra1964.com or call them at 801-797-0642. Studio One from PreSonus is the ideal DAW for your home studio, taking you from songwriting all the way through mixing and mastering with a full suite of virtual instruments, guitar amps, and plugins for creative inspiration. It's easy to use for the beginner, yet fully customizable for your high-speed workflow as you become an expert. Get started now with Studio One Artist and PreSonus Sphere for access to all software learning and creative collaboration at PreSonus, wherever sound takes you. Hey Rockstars, it's your host Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Stephen Shirk, an engineer, producer, and owner of Shirk Studio in Chicago. Originally from Bloomington, Illinois, he began playing in bands through junior high and college at Miami University, where he earned a degree in business and marketing. And then in 1998, he moved to New York City to follow his dreams of working in a recording studio, where he worked at places like The Hit Factory, Pink Noise, and Three Tree Productions, and also assisted on sessions at many of the legendary New York studios like Avatar, Power Station, Clinton, Right Track, and Sound on Sound. Recording in New York City also exposed Stephen to a unique artistic community beyond that of just music, and his collaborations with Nadine Robinson ultimately landed one of his sound designs in the Museum of Modern Art's Tempo exhibit in 2002, which is pretty cool. In 2004, Stephen relocated back to the Midwest and moved to Chicago to continue producing and recording bands, creating sound for art installations, as well as providing audio services for the advertising community. This was also the beginning of Shirk Studios. Through a chance meeting at South by Southwest in 2006, Stephen partnered with the music blog HearYa.com and began recording and filming the HearYa live sessions. The video series featured powerful live in-studio recordings of artists like Alabama Shakes, Delta Spirit, Other Lives, Patterson Hood, White Denim, Strand of Oaks, Raylan Baxter, and many more. And in 2013, he acquired the building that now houses Shirk Studios in Chicago's Westtown neighborhood. Firmly planted in Chicago, Stephen records, produces, and hosts sessions with some of Chicago's most celebrated artists, as well as those just getting their start. So I actually had the pleasure of spending a day at Shirk Studios in 2019 when I hosted a mixing clinic there with Anthony Gravino, and we spent the entire day listening to music through the beautiful Sphere console that Stephen has there at his gorgeous studio. And I knew I'd found a favorite new studio in Chicago. So, and plus Stephen is the coolest. So please welcome Stephen Shirk to Recording Studio Rockstar. Stephen, you ready to rock, dude?
Lidge, I'm ready to rock.
I knew that would throw you off when I said that. Welcome back to the show, man. It's great to hang with you.
It's great to be here.
You know, here we are mid-quarantine again. And by the time this comes out, once again, I like to always say this, hopefully we'll be done.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great?
But man, thinking of stuff we used to do before this quarantine, one of them was going up to and doing a mixing, you know, an in-studio mix clinic, which we hosted at Shirk Studios. And that was awesome, dude. I loved seeing your studio up there.
Well, thanks, man. It was great having you guys here. That was a great event. You know, there's people from, it seemed like lots of different skill levels and experience levels, and then having them all in a room, watching Anthony work and watching you, you know, describe some of your work. And I think you actually showed a session, didn't you, that you were working on? I don't know. It was just a great day. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I played a little bit of music that I was recording, and you know, mostly we listened to one of the songs that Anthony was mixing.
Yeah, the Hood Smoke track.
Yeah, the Hood Smoke. Those guys were great. And he had this great method of doing a real hybrid thing. So it was like the session was in Pro Tools, part of it was mixing from there, but then it was also going through your beautiful Sphere console and using some of the outboard gear. And man, it sounded gorgeous.
Yeah, well, that's most. I mean, the Sphere is great, but most of that is Anthony. So I owe him a big thanks for introducing me to you, and he's been a great music friend and collaborator and inspiration since we've known each other for 15 years, maybe. And it's been a great friendship. So thanks, Anthony.
Tell us a little bit more about Shirk Studios. I mean, what is the story behind this Sphere console? There may be a lot of people who've never even heard of a Sphere console.
Okay. Well, Sphere is a spin-off, and I'm probably going to get a few names wrong here, but it all started with Electrodyne. I think John Hall designed those circuits. Is it John Hall? And through the course of time, like Electrodyne was the first, I think, inline console, or something, you know, where you maybe not inline, but where you had an EQ and a preamp and a fader, you know, all right there. And so there's an article on this, I think Larry DeVivo wrote for Tape Op, so you can look that up. And actually, there's a link on my website. But at some point, Electrodyne was sold, or Quad 8 kind of spun off from Electrodyne, and they kind of, think of it like a tree, and you know, they went one way, and then the guy who started Electrodyne, or owned Electrodyne at the time, started doing Sphere consoles, and I think his name was Don McLaughlin, and they were just a custom console through the 70s, and I think they'd made probably 60 or 65, something like that, consoles. I think the first one went to is still at Creative Workshop in Nashville, and one went to the Carter administration's White House.
Wow!
Like I spoke to this guy Wally Wilson, who was kind of partnered with Don McLaughlin when they were just getting it going, and he was kind of the man behind the scenes. And he was telling me all about how they'd spoken with the government about, I want to say it was intelligence, like CIA kind of stuff. And those guys loved Sphere for some reason. They just thought they could hear deeper into the spy tapes or whatever the fuck they were recording. But,
hear deeper into the spy tapes.
Wally was really into that and was telling me about it. So anyways, so there were maybe 60 Sphere consoles made, the A, B, and C, and I think there's an Alpha 1 or 2 or something. I get them a little bit mixed up, but they're just a great, clean, lots of headroom, but with some punch. People say they kind of fall in between the Neve and API spectrum, you know, with the punch of an API, but a little more weight down bottom, more similar to a Neve. But you know, it's neither one or the other, and it's kind of its own thing. And they've got their unique 9-band equalizers, and I don't know. It's just been a great tool to have. I used to have a Neotech, and that was fine. But this opened a lot of doors for me in terms of attracting people to the studio, as well as I had to learn to maintain it.
I bet, man.
Yeah, it was in pretty good shape when I got it. It worked, but it just needed love, and things need to be recapped. And we kind of came up with some mods and design changes for it to make it more.
At least you were probably locked out and actually had schematics for your console. My MCI, this custom built board, has no schematics for it. So I'm just looking at the EQ going like, I don't know what to do with it.
Do you have like a guy that, or woman or somebody that knows it?
Kind of, sort of, maybe.
Better than
not
you?
Really,
sort of thing?
Not really. I've sort of talked to various people, so I'm still trying to figure out what to do with that. But I wanted to qualify what you said about the sphere a little bit, because you overlooked one important part, which is that it looks like a freaking spaceship. That's one of the things I love about it. It's this awesome white console that like when you describe the history of it, you're surprised that the first location wasn't like, David Bowie's studio in New York or something like that.
It's got a look for sure.
And then the EQs, the 9 bands. Now, is that the graphic where like each EQ band is a little lever that goes from left to right?
Yeah, you can kind of think of it like an API 560 with a lot of people are familiar with that. It's not the same circuit or anything, but it's laid out in a similar fashion. The only difference is the levers that move left and right for cut or boost are detented in 2 dB steps, and so it makes it great for recall. And they're just super smooth. You could push them way up. That's usually something everybody comments on that comes that, hasn't used it before. Yeah. Wow. They're like, I just boosted 10 dB on something and it still sounds good. And it doesn't get harsh. And so that's a nice feature to have an EQ, I guess.
Yeah. It's funny that we take that for granted. I mean, I guess because of the nature of coming up with gear that is maybe, sometimes, I don't know, just more consumery or more affordable rather than, super well designed. We just always run into like, well, you can't go all the way with stuff,
Yeah. It's been a great tool. And I think the Sphere stuff is a slight, upgrade from the Electrodyne designs and maybe some of the Quad 8. Like they sort of, what I've read in papers is like they kind of perfected their design, cleaned up some problems that they had like in the circuit of the earlier Electrodyne preamps, maybe a little more headroom, and the EQs have bigger inductors in the Sphere. And so that gives you the ability to push it harder without it getting crunchy. So,
well, that's cool, man. And then I also like hearing the story about these technology companies. It's almost like band members, they form bands and they break up and they go different directions and do a new one.
It's ugly sometimes too, I think. I think there was like some stealing of schematics from like Quad 8 was taken from Electrodyne or something like that along the lines. You have to read that story. It's pretty interesting.
I bet. Well, cool. And then the Rockstars, of course, we've got links to in the show notes, so you can go over and learn more about. You can go see Stephen's website and learn more about this stuff as well. But Stephen, I gave a bit of an introduction, but in a short version, give us a little bit more insight into who you are, and you've done some cool things like doing art installations and stuff like that. It was so great to read that in your bio. Tell us a little bit more about how you got into the recording and moved to Chicago to start the studio.
Got it. Well, I first got the bug for recording. I mean, my upbringing was not that unique, in that my dad had an old reel-to-reel that I kind of monkeyed around with. You could plug a mic into it. Of course, I didn't have a very good mic, but I plugged my guitar into it and had my first distortion box.
Nice.
And tried some things there and made some really horrible recordings. But fast forward, I never had a cassette 4-track, which is kind of strange. I guess a lot of people go through that phase, and I just never got one. But in college, this would be around between 93 and 97, software recording in the computer was becoming a thing. Early Pro Tools was out there, and I found some software called SAW, SAW, Software Audio Workshop.
Nice.
And it was like a 4-track thing, and I had a PC and just kind of began doing it there and made many, many more horrible recordings, but just kind of got the bug. And was in a band through college and post-college for a little bit. And started practicing, like making my own recordings, writing songs and recording them and learning. And I think I took a class or two in college, and those were tape based still. Like the DAW was still not a thing in the university world. And got an internship at an ADAT studio on the north side of Cincinnati after college, and learned about the hell it is the ADAT. But how did it I guess the guitar player, Paul Grassini, that was in my band, I was a guitar player as well, but he was from Long Island and moved back to New York. And he's like, man, you should come out here and I might be able to hook you up with a job. And so I took a leap of faith and moved out to New York in like August of 98. And there was a job I was going to grab at this place called Mixed Impressions right in Times Square. And it didn't happen. So I got there and I'm kind of like stuck living at my friend Paul's grandfather's like upstairs apartment in his old house. And he's like, well, hey man, I'll talk to my boss and maybe he can put you in the back room transferring tapes. So Paul worked at a jingle house called 3 Tree. And he got me that job transferring. CDRs were just becoming a thing. They're like, well, let's transfer all these old 1/4-inch reels to CDR because that'll last. CDRs don't seem to last that long.
Right. And you guys probably had those stacks of CDR burners and stuff like that.
They actually just had one because it was like such a new thing. And they were just like, let's try that out. So I had a job of like playing back these reels of old advertisements and capturing them on the CD, and it was pretty boring work, but it was a start. And it was my first New York City studio gig.
Yeah, and it gets you in the room with people and you start meeting people, right?
That was everything. And so the next step was there's this guy, an older man at 3 Tree. His name was Milton Brooks. And he knew I was looking to get into a studio, more on the engineering side of things. And he's like, you should call up Troy Germano at the Hit Factory. And I'm like, well, I've sent him like 3 resumes. Haven't heard anything back. It's here's where coming, knowing somebody helps out. And he put in a call for me. And eventually Troy called me back and they gave me an opportunity. And I went over there. And I was just, your general assistant. And it was like a dream come true for me. I'm in these rooms with, big Neve consoles and big SSL consoles. And the level of talent was, off the charts in terms of who was walking through the door. It was just, I was, this green kid from the Midwest in New York for the first time, like just blown away.
And so what were your
much out of my element.
What were your first tasks over there?
So I would have to arrive about 6:30 in the morning, I think, and open up the mic locker, do inventory check. Then we would run to the deli around the corner, grab fruit for the studios and lay out the fruit in the lounges, straighten out the pencils, make sure they had the tape, everything that would be required for the session it always looked perfect. There's 2 red Sharpies, 2 black ones, 2 blue ones, then some little ones, all that kind of detail stuff. And then, we were errand boys too and run tapes around to other studios, run mics up and down from the locker downstairs or things to the tech department. What else was there? And then sitting in on sessions. Eventually you'd earn a little trust and they would allow you to be in on sessions where you would assist the assistant essentially. Could be taking food orders. And that was just amazing to me. Like starting out, setting up mics for an orchestra. Like I'd never seen so many mics and cables and chairs, and they were doing a lot of what do they call it? Just soundtrack work, I guess, for Broadway musicals. And they would come in and you'd have this whole union orchestra, and it was just amazing to see all this go down. And some guy that could actually engineer that, I couldn't get my head around it at the time.
Yeah, it was a lot to absorb all at once.
So much, but it was just an amazing experience being in a facility like that and watching how tightly organized and well-oiled it was pretty fascinating. I feel like I learned some good discipline there. I also was dealt one of the toughest blows ever.
Yeah, let's hear that. I wanted to ask you if you had any good stories about, something not going great.
Well, I got fired. That sucked.
Right?
I was in my, this is my dream job. And I just got a call one night saying, Steve, it's not working out. And I'm like, what does that mean? And well, it's just not working out. But did I do something wrong? It's that whole
They're like, you're a little too Chicago, man. For New York.
I was probably a little too Bloomington, so it hurt, obviously.
Yeah.
But it was one of the greatest lessons ever because you got to pick yourself up. And, I could have gone back to Bloomington with my tail between my legs or whatever. Mm-hmm. But no, this is what I came to do. And I found another way, and I found another job shortly thereafter, and it all worked out. But it was a really hard thing to deal with at the time. And I'll never forget, like maybe 2 years after this, after I was in another job, making, good money and getting do records of my own and stuff like that. I was walking around Little Italy one night. I lived pretty close to there in Manhattan. And I ran by, I saw Troy Germano having dinner with a friend or something outside on the sidewalk. And I think we had been at a bar. So I was kind of little. But I wanted to go off on him, but I knew better. And I saw him and I was like, Troy. And I kind of pointed at him like I was going to say, hey, like, thanks for firing me. And then I was like, just bite your tongue. And I just looked at him and smiled and said, have a nice night. And just walked by. And I'm glad I didn't tell him off because I wouldn't have accomplished anything. I would have just been like, that was fucking dumb. Like, that
right.
I just burned a bridge potentially. Right. So he's done well for himself. They have a great facility and he's got his own place now there. And maybe we do things differently, but he's done well for himself and he should be proud of that.
Nice.
So,
well, now you have a beautiful studio in Chicago. So who cares about those guys anyway?
Yeah, exactly. Screw them.
Do you want to know how I get a consistent sound quality mixing hundreds of episodes of Recording Studio Rockstars? Well, I've been cheating all along by using Isotope RX and Ozone on every single episode. Right now, you are hearing RX declick, declip, DS, deplosive, voice denoise, Ozone multiband compression, EQ, and limiting on my voice. If you want great consistent mixes too, go to isotope.com/rockstars and use the code ROCK10 to get an additional 10% off. Have you ever struggled to finish a mix wondering if it was truly ready for mastering? Wouldn't it be great to have a trusted coach walk you through the final stages of mixing so that you could confidently deliver your mix for professional mastering, knowing that it was just right? At soundporter.com, home of the iterative mastering process, Brian Murphy is your trusted coach to listen to your needs and help you get your mix ready for mastering. Contact Brian now for a free mix review and mastering demo at soundporter.com. I do have a question for you. So you said you talked about like 6:30 in the morning, and then you do mic locker inventory. Yeah. And that was interesting because as a studio owner, I think one of the things you realize is that you eventually you just acquire so much stuff. It becomes really hard to keep track of.
Absolutely.
And I've thought about that before. I was like, how do you make sure you don't? It's very frustrating when you're missing something and you're like, how long has that been missing? Or where'd that ride cymbal go, or where'd that microphone go? And usually it's because I misplaced it. But a lot of times, it could
How
be
often
anything.
do you get to that point, like the next morning after a session, where maybe there was somebody else in your studio, like I bet they walked out with that, and then like I don't know, 10 minutes later, like no, I just put it over here. I'm an idiot. What a jerk.
So my question is, what are some things about that you learned over at Hit Factory that you took with you and adopted for your own studio routine,
Well, I don't have like a clipboard with a checklist that I go down. I'm not that organized, but I have like for my mic locker, it's, your typical filing cabinet type of thing. I don't know. I guess you call it a shop cabinet maybe. Right. And I just put foam down in every drawer, and every drawer is kind of labeled. So these are the 57s, these are the 421s, these are the, whatever. And I know how many I have. And so I go through there. I don't go through there every morning, but at the end of the session, I'm usually helping the engineer put the stuff away. And that's my checkup time. It's not, I usually don't do it the first thing in the morning. It's kind of like when we strike. And that's something, and we can get in this now or we can push it later, but it's, I kind of do the assisting here at my own studio, which some people think is nuts. But that's my chance for quality control, and that's my chance for managing my inventory and making sure everything's working. Because I know what it's supposed to do, and I know how it, if this thing's got a funky switch, I can tell the engineer, like, look out for this, And at the end of the session, if there's a problem, I can ask them, is everything working? Is there something I should be aware of? Do I need to look at this? And it seems to be like a good process for me right now, being that guy. It's kind of annoying sometimes to come back on a Sunday night after my kids are in bed and, to drive back to the studio. But it's
right.
It allows me to do it. And it's how I have to work right now, given the economy of the music world and COVID stuff,
Well, when we did the mix clinic there with Anthony, I thought it was very cool that you were around, and to me, it made me feel super welcome. And I think it made everybody there feel welcome because that was basically the vibe. You just like made us all feel like you were glad we were all there, which was great.
And, cool. I was.
Well, it was fun. And you have a beautiful studio too. So describe a little bit more, the layout of your studio so that the rock stars can picture it.
Okay. Well, it's kind of, I guess they call it a railroad type situation in terms of the layout of the building. You walk in the front door and you're in the lounge. And it's the kitchen lounge kind of area. And then, as you move front to back, the next room you walk through is the control room. And then you walk, and then as you pass through there, you're into the live room. And so there's not like long hallways and winding, corridors and things like that where you can hide away. There's a back storage garage. And then inside of my live room, the live room is about 30 feet long by 20 feet wide, 15-foot ceilings.
That's great. That's a nice size.
It's a good size. It's not super big. When I first got here, I was like, oh, this is enormous. This is going to be amazing. You just fill it up with stuff.
Yeah.
It's just how it works. But I've got 2 little ISO booths in the corner. And
how big are the ISO booths? And what are some thoughts you have about how to make ISO booths fit in one big room like that and stuff?
Well, I should back up a little bit. When I bought this building, the studio, like the structure of the studio was floated and it was already built. It was kind of a turnkey situation. So, I brought my gear in, but the bones were a studio, And so the booths were what they were, and I haven't modified them too much because I always had the intent of getting rid of them and making them better. But so I haven't upgraded them because I feel like I could take them down and make them even better. But they are totally workable, and we've gotten great results with it. There's just shortcomings of them that I feel like I could improve on.
So share some of that with us. What kind of things do they get used for, and what are some ways where you're like, if it was like this, I'd use it for this and this thing?
Okay, well,
because I think that helps us when we conceptualize designing our spaces,
Yeah, well, I think they're very much phone booth size, where they're maybe 5 feet by 4 feet, about 8 feet in height. And so the cubic volume of air in there is not that great, you know. You want, even if it was a small footprint, it would be good if they went all the way up to the ceiling, just to have maybe double the airspace in there, because sound likes that.
So if we picture it, we've got a big room with a tall ceiling, and then when whoever designed it put the ISO booth in, they said, "Oh, we'll make the ISO booth a smaller."
Yeah, well, and for good reason, because you can store drums up there and things like that. It's not a bad use of space.
Yeah.
But it's just like, from an acoustic standpoint, a little more air volume would be good.
Right.
So there are things to improve on. And I think when Neil, the guy who built it, when he designed it, he made one booth and then he added another one a few years later. And the first one is coupled, it shares the same floor as the main acoustic space, the main live room. And so frequencies can transmit into that one easier. It's a single ply glass on the door. It's just not as much isolation.
Right.
But it works. It totally works. Nobody needs to have complete vacuum sealed air situations. At least, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that room typically gets used for, I'll put acoustic guitars in there. I'll put guitar amps in there. If somebody had to sing and play acoustic while we're doing drums, I would put them in that room.
Right.
There's a booth that's closer to where we do drums, and that is the second booth he built. It's got double ply glass, and it's more robust. It's floated floor. And I usually put the upright bass in there when I have to do an upright bass at the same time as drums. We put bass amps in there, guitar amps, any amp. They work really well as amp lockers or amp closets.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
It's when
too.
you got to put a human in them that it gets tricky, because the other shortcoming of them is there's not ventilation supply and return, and so it doesn't turn over air. So if you get in there, you can get a little warm. Mm-hmm. But maybe that elevates the level of performance.
I always like to say that heat is better for rock and roll than cold. Mm-hmm. I've had more magic moments in a studio when we're cooking a little bit as a band than, if it's too icy.
Yeah. You go in a lot of studios, and I'm not knocking nicer studios or whatever, but they're always cold. Like, yeah, that's not ideal. I mean, even in the summer, like when it's hot outside and I got the air conditioning ripping, it's like, man, this is not comfortable. I'm like chilly. So I try to keep it the right temp. It's a challenge always with the hot gear, and you got to keep it in a comfortable zone temperature wise so it operates properly. It doesn't burn things out, but it's a challenge. One of the best compliments I ever got, I don't think it really relates to the heat, but just the warmth of the place, was Mavis Staples was in here with her band a couple of years ago, and they were rehearsing for a tour for a couple of days. Wow. And that was really, that woman is amazing. Just sitting, listening to her talk. But she said, Steve, I've been in a lot of studios, and yours, when I come in, I feel like I'm at home.
Nice, man.
And I was like, man, I'm going to remember that.
She said, you're like, Mavis, you say that to all the guys.
Yeah, right.
Why do you think she's so successful, right?
Yeah, right. She knows how to party up, but I don't care. She said it to me, and that's good enough, But,
I had a chance to record Sheryl Crow at my Bonnaroo Haybell studio. And when she showed up at the studio, she came right up to me. She said, it's so great to see you again, and gave me a hug. And I was like, that's why I've never met her before, but that's why she's so successful.
That's such a good move. Make people feel like $1 million, you know?
Of course, it wasn't during the pandemic. Let me put it in that context, right? API Audio has been designing mic pre's, compressors, and EQs for more than 50 years. Every product they make includes founder Saul Walker's original proprietary op amps and transformer designs to make sure you always get that legendary API sound in your studio. Whether you are writing songs for fun or mixing Grammy-winning hits, API has got you covered with individual modules, rack units, and dedicated consoles to make sure your next record is your very best. Go to APIaudio.com. Sometimes you just need a mic that will stand out in a mix. That's when you need the new BB29 Signature Series from JZ Microphones. The unique single diaphragm Golden Drop capsule gives the BB29 airy highs and smooth mid-range to help your tracks stand at the front of your mix. JZ's handcrafted, fully discreet microphones come with a 5-year warranty and free shipping to the US. You're hearing my voice on the BB29 right now. Use the limited time coupon ROCKSTARS to get 50% off the BB29 at jzmic.com. So what, Mavis, now, did you pay attention to what guitar she brought, or what her guitar rig was?
She just brought her voice. She had, Rick, I'm going to forget his last name, her guitar player and her music director.
Am I remembering that wrong? Is she not also known for some badass guitar playing?
I don't think so, but maybe. Pops, her dad played. I know that.
Okay, all right.
But she was mostly the lead singer, I think.
Maybe I'm thinking of Thorpe or something like that.
I don't know.
Anyway,
but I digress. She was great. Her band is fantastic.
Yeah.
Steve, her drummer, it's just, I learned some stuff from him.
And the Staples singer is what a classic,
Yeah. So that was a great experience, just having them here, watching them do their thing, and it's fun to have a studio that other people use sometimes, just for experiences like that.
All right. So, Steve Albini, of course, in Electrical Studios there. One of the things that I remember Steve did in his studio design to make the rooms have more airspace was he actually opened up the edge of the room so that it went down into the basement as well.
The tape vault below.
Yeah, which I thought was a really interesting design technique. I can't wrap my brain around it.
But it's just like a vented edge around the perimeter of the room.
Kind of like a ported speaker. It kind of ports the room to the room below. Now, can you access your basement in your studio if you wanted to?
No, there is no basement. There probably was at one point. This building is like 120 years old, and but now when you walk in at sidewalk level, it's just like a concrete slab all the way front to back. Mm-hmm. But at some point, if you look at the front of the building, the windows on the ground floor go all the way down to the bottom of the sidewalk. So that makes no sense for how somebody would build a building.
Right.
So at some point there was a basement, or at least it went down another foot or two, and there was a slight foundation. But I imagine they just filled it in with bodies and concrete somewhere. I don't know, some creepy Chicago stuff. But
great.
There was a garage here at some point before, so maybe they were the people that poured the slab so they could get vehicles in here.
Well, that's groovy. Well, tell us a little bit more about what it means to work with having a console like the Sphere there. What benefits do you feel like you get from having a console? Why would you advise somebody else to go that route? What should they be thinking about?
Well, I think from a tracking standpoint, which is when I'm working on a project, I may do it front to back, tracking, production, mixing, all that stuff. But when somebody else comes to rent my studio, another engineer, producer, they're usually coming here to track. And I wanted to have a piece that was attractive for that. And in this day and age, I think people are getting great results mixing in the box. I still mix in the console just because I have it, and I refuse to let it sit there idle while I mouse away. But for tracking, it's so much more flexible to be able to buzz tracks together. You want to do a couple of mics on a particular source, bus them into one channel, or send them through one bus into the recorder. It just makes life easier. You're not looking at 2 tracks in Pro Tools or eating up 2 tracks on the tape machine. You've got everything right in front of you. And I think the biggest thing might be the cohesiveness of sound, because you're using all the same type of preamp. And that almost goes against today's logic, where people tend to buy a little bit of this and a little bit of that, cover the need bass, the API bass, and whatever in between, which is fine if that's how you want to work. I found that when I got this console, I made a conscious decision. I'm going to sell all my outboard pre's and just focus on the console so I really get to know it. And what I really found that I loved is I stopped thinking about how does this mic work with this preamp and this, thinking about my signal change so much as I'm setting up for a band. You're just like, take that out of the equation. I know I have good preamps. Like, preamps don't make great records. They wake up a mic and make it sound good, and maybe they all do it a little bit different, but you can get a great result with a great preamp. And it's so I just like not having to think about it as much.
Yeah, I like that. Wake up a mic.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I feel like a great preamp does. When you've got something more, a cheaper mic preamp, it doesn't bring the mic to its full potential, because that signal coming out of a microphone is really small.
Yeah.
And it's what the preamp is doing is making it big. And so, you compare a Mackie to a Sphere or a Neve or whatever, like the way that it brings it to life is just totally different.
Yeah. Don't be dissing on my Mackie, man. It's upstairs busy collecting dust right now.
I've got a 1402 Mackie that I've had for, since 98. The thing still works. But it's, back to the console, like the busing is a huge thing, and everything right in front of you. So you're always kind of in the mixed spot. And in terms of like, if you're going to operate your studio in some sort of commercial fashion, where you let other people use it, it's part of the dream people have when they think of a recording studio. And maybe that's changing, but when you walk into a studio and you see a nice console, you're like, yeah, this is what I had in my head most of the time, I think. And it just helps complete that picture, whether it's the band walking in or another engineer. It just kind of helps. Now, that may not make it the smart move from a cost standpoint, but it's one of those little things that just helps complete the sale or close the deal, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. Well, I love the tactile nature of a console too.
Yeah.
When it sounds great, that's wonderful. but also just the ability to, I realize when I grab faders, I don't just grab one fader. I grab like a handful of faders,
Yeah.
and shove things around. You can coax things, and it's so much easier to like quickly mute things. And it's just easy. It's just faster to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And when you are doing a horrible mix and you just need to like pull them all down, there's something satisfying about putting both forearms up on the console. Just it's like wiping the slate clean all at one time. I can only do on my little controller for Pro Tools, I can only do 8. So then I got to keep banking, and it just takes longer. But yeah, working on the console for a mix is really fun, I think. I tend to like put everything at Unity to start with, and I'll do my moves inside of Pro Tools. And then maybe there's some important moves that need to be done in the analog realm that I'll do out there. But it's kind of a hybrid approach for me.
Right, that's the mixing stage, and the reason you would do that is because if you have a Unity gain on the console, it makes it much easier to recall the session later, right?
Right. And that's something I do. I have some friends that make fun of me for it, but I have these, recall charts that have essentially a picture of 32 channel strips, and it's about a 4-page document. And I just go through and write down all the EQ settings and pan settings, and what bus assignments and my outboard patches. And
nice. An interesting thing about that. So it'd be easy to look at that and go like, dude, it's 2020. You shouldn't have to do all this writing down. But what I bet does happen when you do that is you really learn what it is you're doing and what you did in that mix. Yeah. And if something wasn't working, you'd be much quicker to go, I did +4 on that one thing. Maybe that was too much or whatever, You'd probably have a better sense of what's going on with your mix.
Yeah, and you realize things that when you're taking the notes, like, oh man, I had that there. Wow, that's not what I thought I would do, or I had my overhead set different. Right. Maybe I need to go back and look at that print again and make sure that doesn't sound wonky. That something that slipped by me. It's just the recall notes are kind of a stopgap. Maybe at the end of the day to make sure everything's cool, and of course you're never getting when it comes to recalling, you're never getting everything exactly right. But I feel like I've gotten pretty good at like getting my fader settings or my fader levels, close. And it's and if you're coming back for recall, things are changing anyways. But yeah, I love having the console, man. That's it's been a great thing, and it's also opened some doors for me. Like I said, in terms of maintenance. That's Soren Wittrup was the guy who first helped me get it going, and he kind of gave me the confidence to get under the hood and start recapping stuff and walk me through the first few modules. And so I don't know, being able to do that stuff on your own has been great. And then I befriended this guy he's near Cleveland, Gary Barnett, who's just been a godsend for me. If anybody's ever interested in learning about, DIY audio stuff, go on Group DIY. Nice. And this guy built a Sphere /API console out of Sphere parts he pulled from a dumpster. Just like unusable cards, like there's tons of gaps. He didn't have certain pieces, and he just basically backwards or reverse engineered stuff to work, and found schematics and asked questions, and he documents this whole process. And he made like a 16-channel desk from scratch, and became a Sphere lover through the process. Or maybe already was, but he's been an insanely valuable resource for me. He helped me develop he took his design and we applied it to my desk. On a Sphere, the line inputs are unbalanced. There's no transformer or anything like that, or a balanced receiver, because there was usually a tape machine feeding the line inputs that had transformer outputs, and so it was I imagine a cost saving measure. But it sounds fine unless you've got maybe some digital converters that do a balancing scheme in a different way, and all converters kind of have their own scheme. There's not like one standard. And so I think the previous owner had issues with a Lynx talking right. So they put transformers in, but they did some mods that didn't work quite right. So Gary helped me find this. We implemented his balanced receiver into the line inputs, and it puts a Sphere op amp right there. and it works perfectly. It sounds amazing. And so we did that for all 32 channels. And we did some additional bus output cards that helped me expand my capabilities during large sessions. And this guy's just been awesome. Like,
that's
I can
cool.
send him pictures of a module and be like, I can't figure this out. And he'll draw circles around the components and send it back and like, work on this one. I'm like, okay, got it. Thanks, Gary. He's the best.
During the height of record making, the Spectre 1964 100 series preamp was the perfect choice to build consoles for Tom Dowd, Muscle Shoals, Stax Studios, Ardent Studios, and New York City Record Plant, bringing you the sound of ZZ Top, Aerosmith, Bruce Springsteen, King Crimson, John Lennon, and many more. The 100 series amplifiers offer extremely stable, high-speed circuit design with unequaled headroom, low noise, and linear output, irrespective of transient audio peaks, giving you cleaner, punchier, dynamic recordings. The Spectre 1964 legacy is carried on today through Bill Cheney and Jim Romney. Now you can get that same incredible sound in your studio with the STX Mic Breeze, BBDI, and comp limiters. Go to Spectre1964.com or call 801-797-0642. You're hearing my voice right now on the JZ BB29 microphone, the Spectre 1964 STX 100, and C610 comp limiter. A gold bar should be kept safe in a vault because it's valuable, but it could be replaced if it was ever lost. One of your songs or recordings, on the other hand, is worth more than gold because it's one of a kind. It's you, and if it was ever lost, it could never be replaced. So wouldn't you feel better knowing your music was safe? This is why I like to have a dedicated system drive, audio work drive, virtual instrument storage drive, cloud storage, and an extra large backup drive in my studio computer. And when I'm finished with the project, I move it onto a dedicated pair of external drives for archiving. Thanks to OWC, I can count on my drives being super fast, reliable, and secure so that I can work quickly and sleep soundly at night knowing my music is safe. I want your music to be safe too. Discover the best options for storage and backup for your studio from OWC at maxsales.com/rockstars. Have you ever wished you could remove the click-track bleed from a singer's vocal mic, the sound of shuffling feet from a full choir, or clicking noises from the valves of an otherwise brilliant trumpet solo? These are just some of the incredible things I've been able to clean up, edit, or remove from a recording using the magic of iZotope RX. Great for mixing with a collection of plugins for your DAW to manage plosives, clicks, S's, noise, buzz, reverb, breaths, and even guitar fret squeaks with the set it and forget it simplicity that lets you focus on your creativity in the studio while you let iZotope handle the audio challenges. If you've ever wanted to truly feel like a magician in the studio, then iZotope RX is your magic wand. Go to iZotope.com/rockstars in the show notes and use the code ROCK10 to get an additional 10% off your first purchase. Hey, Rockstars, we're back now for the second half of the show, aka the Jam Session. My guest today is Stephen Shirk, joining us from Shirk Studios in beautiful Chicago, Illinois. Stephen, are you ready to jam, dude?
Jam, yes, I am ready.
Welcome back. Sometimes I ask people, like, what is it? What does jamming mean? I guess a big question is it more than one chord?
It can be.
Well, you're a guitar player,
too complicated. Right? Yeah, but I'm a hack.
You still doing music? Are you still playing for fun and stuff like that and writing?
I have a band that I play with. Well, we don't. Last gig we played was in end of January, but we usually do like 2 or 3 gigs a year playing fundraisers. And we got our start playing for the Tiny Hearts Foundation, and somehow we became the Tiny Hearts Club band or something like that. Nice. So now we're just called Tiny Hearts. But anyways, we play fundraisers and that sort of thing, and it's covers and actually super fun.
That sounds like fun, man. I wish I was in a cover band because I like covering other people's songs, especially if you get to do it in your own kind of way, you know?
Yeah. It's just fun. I don't know if we're great, but it doesn't really matter. It's a great outlet, you know?
Making music should be for fun, for sure. You were talking about tracking sessions at your studio, and I remember that one of the sessions that happened between when I was there and more recently was that some of the people I know down here, one of them hasn't been a guest yet. So Daniel Tashin has been on the show. Ryan Hewitt's been on the show. And then Ian Fitchick, I'm hoping will be on the show sometime soon too. But I think those guys came up to do a session with you, right?
Yeah. They came and worked here for 2 weeks this past October to cut Brett Eldridge's new record, Sunday Drive. And
oh, cool.
It was a fantastic experience just to be a fly on the wall. I was kind of the assistant. Sean Williamson was Ryan's assistant, but I was just here to kind of host and make sure they had everything they needed and walk Ryan through the gear and whatever needed to be done. And it was just kind of a magical couple weeks for me. I told the guys when they left, it was like, man, this feels like summer camp just ended. It was kind of a downer. Everybody left. They rolled out of town in a tour bus. I'm like, bye.
So how would you describe the session as far as instrumentation, and how would a band set up to get the right kind of thing?
With those guys, with Daniel and Ian, like they were the band. They had one other guy, Josh Moore, come, and he was kind of like if they needed a third guy to play, then he would be that, or sometimes he would sub for one of them. But Ian was almost always on drums, and then Daniel would play piano, and then Brett would sing, and they would cut the record, like the lead final vocal, while they're cutting drums and piano.
And Brett is a guitar player too?
No, Brett is, I think he does play guitar and a little piano now, but on the record, it's pretty much just a vocal thing for him.
Cool.
He writes and sings. He's got a massive voice.
Well, let's talk about setting something like that up. I mean, I know you were assisting the assistant on this one, and hopefully you didn't fire yourself at the end of this.
No, it was fun. We had a blast. It was great.
I just thinking back to the New York day.
Yeah.
Recording piano and drums, that is one of those things sometimes where you're like, what's the way to do this, Because the piano's acoustic.
Yeah. So they chose, I have a Yamaha C7 like grand piano, and then a old clunky upright that I got free on Craigslist.
And both of those would be in the big room where the drums probably go also, right?
Uh-huh. And so what we did, they used the upright for, I want to say, 9 or 10 out of 11 songs on the record, I think. They just like the character, the vibe of it. It's not a precise instrument, but it's got a lot of warmth and character. Yeah. So we had, I think Ryan had a pair of KM85s on the back of it, and we had that kind of against the wall with some blankets covering any gap. So it had a little, space back there. I'm sure there were reflections off the wall and all kinds of goofy stuff, but that's just how we made it work. The piano was probably 10 feet away from the drums, not even. I found that if there's going to be bleed between drums and some instrument, be it bass or piano or something, make that instrument closer to the drums. So whatever bleed there is closer in time.
Right.
The further you get it away, the roomier that bleed is going to make your drum sound. And so the placement, they're fairly close. And then we built a drum. I have these 8-foot tall gobos, kind of like Abbey Road style, for lack of a better term. But I have 4 of those. And we placed those around the drum kit, and then I built a little roof over the top of it. It's so we had a very dead drum room.
Right. So you're kind of tightening up around the drums.
Right. But it's still bleeding out. It's not like it is airtight like a room, but it's not, they got crazy good drum sounds. Most Ian and Ryan just kill it in those departments.
Yeah. So if Eric Valentine has the drumbrella, you built like the drum homeless guy's box shelter.
Yeah, I've got the drum shack.
The drum shack.
Yeah, it's literally like I've got some dreams for ways to do it more elegantly, but currently it's wooden slats spanning across these gobos.
Oh, that's clever. And then that way the blankets are sort of held up there.
Yeah, instead of blankets, I use I've got these, I guess they're 6 feet tall 703 panels that I inherited from a rental studio I had many years ago. And I just put them side by side, and it makes a very rigid yet absorptive roof. And so it's dead as a doornail in there.
That's cool. Now, and then on either side are gobos, which are rigid,
Mm-hmm.
so they become the walls.
Yeah.
I don't have rigid gobos in my studio. So I'm trying to think if there might be a clever way to do that. But I realize that what I like to do, and probably anybody can do in their studio, is you set up, they're maybe not tall enough for a drum kit, but you set up what I call the T formation of a mic stand where you extend it all the way up
and do the packing blankets.
Yeah, and then you can drape the blankets over it. And maybe if you can get a short drummer under there, you could like put a little thing across that's not too heavy across that T or something. I don't know. I probably just described something that's going to collapse right on top of somebody.
Yeah. Well, that is the biggest concern I have with my setup, is that I know not to move it when there's a roof on. And if I do have to move it, I do it very carefully. But I would like to make it so it's a little more stupid proof and a little potentially safer, where it couldn't be knocked over by somebody.
As we're talking about this, I can totally picture there's probably a way to do it with PVC. We could probably all make some kind of like disassemblable, quick,
like PVC piping?
Yeah, just PVC piping, like a simple like garden frame. Oh, you did it. All right, tell us all about it.
Well, you have to use really thick PVC piping for long spans because it's too flexible.
Right.
If you use like the 1.5 or what is it, 1 or 2 inch, something like that, it's just too wobbly. I suppose you could make something, where it's more rigid, but you have to use so much piping that it becomes tough to take apart.
Well, I was personally thinking about creating, like a Buckminster Fuller geodesic dome version, of course. I don't know what kind
okay,
you made.
That might, yeah. Mine was another version of my shack, but it didn't work out for me. But you might have a better design, so we're going to default to your idea.
No, yeah, I thought you were going to say, like, I tried it with PVC, but turns out that it was still full of sewage when it came out on the drummer.
Stank.
Well, that's cool. So I like that idea of doing, I love when you can sort of create your own little session architecture, for stuff, and it works.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been the whole like gobo drum booth thing has been a work in progress since I've had the building for 7 years. And I'm constantly kind of reformatting it. I finally made so that I had enough gobo coverage to come all the way around the front of the drums. I made a gap in the back and put like a piece of 2x4 that attaches to the wall, and that supports a blanket. So we have like kind of a blanket door.
Nice.
Which is annoying, but it works. So that I actually did that, I think, for the first time for Ryan's session with the Brett Eldridge thing. And so it worked well. So I just kind of keep it up now. But yeah, back to that session though. That was great. Watching those guys work, that was pretty amazing. Like the level of talent in the room was pretty nuts. Brett sings like nobody's business. I mean, there were a few moments I think where he came out and sang in the room, not in the booth, just because he wanted to feel the instruments and make it happen and put some limitations on his performance. Like it has to be right. There's no way to overdub and have it match sonically, And
yeah,
it takes balls to do that. And he delivered the goods. Like he did a great job.
So wait, I was writing something down as you said that too, but were you saying that his vocal mic was not isolated in the booth, but it was bleeding with the instrument?
It was not. On a few songs, it just felt better for him to be out in the room, or maybe he felt better about his ability to deliver.
Well, and you talked about the be close to the drums. So that brings up a couple of reminders for me. One is that Matt Rossbang shared that with us originally, early on the podcast as well, where he was like, if you're going to do drum or vocal in the same space, like bring it close to the drums. Don't instinctively move it far away thinking you're going to get away from the drums, because you're not going to get then from them.
It's just going to make the hi-hat and the snare more flammy.
Yeah, just bring it close and so that it becomes part of the sound in the right way. And then
I remember that podcast, SM7 and Margot Price, right?
That's right. Yeah. And then another one is I then had a chance to try that out myself, and I had a vocalist stand right next to the piano and a no headphone piano vocal performance. And it just was gorgeous. It turned out so well. And the pitch was so natural on her singing voice and stuff, So
yeah, there's something to that, like being in the room and where maybe they don't have to wear headphones or they can just wear one.
Yeah. Who writes a freaking song on headphones? We pick up an acoustic, You pick up your acoustic to write a song, you don't put a pair of headphones on too. Well, you might if you're micing yourself up.
Right. But it's a discipline that's pretty cool. Like if you can deliver the goods.
But it is a little, it makes you nervous if you're not sure if it's going to work. So
yeah.
I guess part of the encouragement there is don't worry. Everybody else who's ever recorded is also nervous when they do that.
Totally. It's always a balancing act. You're we did something here last night where it was 5 vocalists and then the lead vocalist, and it was all they're playing piano and there's bleed. And she's like, do you think we'll be able to like replace anything if we have to? I said, nope. Like you got to get it.
Forget about it.
and it just makes them rise to the occasion. And that's what you need when you're making records. Like playing it safe is not that cool.
Yeah, it's true. Playing it safe doesn't really make very interesting music usually.
No.
So before we leave that thought entirely, let's riff on that for just a sec. For the rock stars who have a home studio environment or wherever, and they're trying to figure out how to do drums in their space, for example. I think you put drums in and then you're like, oh, I need to treat the walls of this room, or I need to treat the room. And it's just a great reminder. You might not need to do that. You might just get clever about the ways that you can put a little cage around the drum area. Another thing that we've got a lot of usually that we forget about that makes a great gobo is couch cushions. I put those,
absolutely.
You can build those around a guitar amp and sort of like block it out kind of nicely sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And then, you don't always have to buy things that are pre-made. It's like like you said, like couch cushions. There's so many things around your home or your garage or whatever, just blankets, if that's all you got, just use whatever you have. I think, and this is kind of a tangent, but the limitations are sometimes your best creative friend, just use what's in front of you and don't stress about it. That's something I struggled with for a long time, thinking I always needed better stuff.
Right.
So.
Well, all right. So let's talk about some of these cool sessions you've done. When you did these HearYa sessions, which to me, they're very familiar because they're very similar to what I was doing at the Bonnaroo Hay Bale studio. And in fact, there are quite a number of the same bands on there. Tell us about doing the Alabama Shakes there. And one of the things I noticed is you were using this the Sennheiser mic on Brittany's voice. It looked like, what is that mic? Why might you have chosen that? And what are some things that you want to say about getting a vocal sound like that?
Well, those sessions, I haven't been doing those for a little while, but they, when we were having that, we were always I didn't want to use headphones ever because I felt like bands just don't play shows with headphones on, You want them to be as comfortable as possible or as close to feeling like they're on stage,
And maybe we should say, what is the HearYa session? Because I might have skipped over describing
All right, well,
it.
that was, HearYa is a music blog. It still is. And for, I don't know, from 2006 to 2016 or 14, I forget. We were doing the live HearYa sessions at my studio, and the band would come in while they were on tour. They'd stop through Chicago, and before they played the Hideout or Shuba's or Lincoln Hall or whatever, we'd get them for an hour or hour and a half, and they'd come in. I'd backline it with my studio gear, and sometimes they'd bring their guitars and stuff, but my drums and my amps and things would be set up for them. And we'd cut 3-4 songs fast, and I would always use floor monitors for vocals and things just because it's what they were used to doing on stage. Now that's changed a little bit, as people are more and more comfortable with in-ear monitors and maybe tour with their own little rig or that kind of thing. But even when we got into that world, some people used in-ears for a few of our sessions, and it was really awkward because the camera guys had no idea who was singing. Or because there's no vocal in the room. There's just raging guitars.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean? So the camera guy would always miss be a little late getting over to the vocalist when they were jumping in on a verse or chorus. But anyways, the monitor thing, back to your question about the 441. 441 is pretty tight pickup pattern. And I found it to be a really good friend at least with my monitor. I had some big 12-inch woofer with the big horn, Yamaha floor monitors. And I would test which mics worked best. I found the Beta 58 worked great. Just had that kind of the S's get a little bit harsh in that thing, but it works.
Yeah, it's got a nice presence to it.
It cuts through the mix, The 441 is a little flatter through the upper mids. So you kind of have to EQ in some of that whatever needs to cut through. But the tight pickup pattern is really your friend there. It's got the roll off built into it, and it takes EQ really well.
Now here's ask a question. Why not like a big tube condenser mic on the vocal, for example?
Well, the pickup pattern is just too wide. They have big condenser mics have, so much reach. They're designed to sound great when you're maybe a foot or 2 or 3 away.
Right. So they're trying hard to hear everything else in the room as well.
Yeah. I mean, not that what's right in front of it isn't going to sound good, but you're going to grab so much more cymbal hash and guitar bleed and all this other stuff that you maybe don't want, especially if you need to start EQing stuff. So I just found that the dynamics worked best there. I have a Shure or a Neumann, I think it's called the KSM or KMS 84. I bought it from Anthony. It's basically a KM84 with a handheld. It's got a shock mount inside, but it's meant to be like a handheld vocal mic that I think they used through the 80s. And I've tried that, but it just doesn't do it as well as a dynamic. When you get the volume up in the room, the dynamic is your friend. It just it just works.
Yeah.
So I found that those mics worked well with the floor wedges, and so to the Alabama Shake session with Brittany, she's just I think you could put any mic in front of her really, and it would sound awesome.
Yeah,
she's amazing.
Thank you, Brittany.
Yeah, that was just an awesome session, and they were just starting to kind of get on everybody's radar. I think they came through in like November, maybe right before Thanksgiving or something. They'd released their EP with "Hold On" on it at CMJ in New York earlier that year or that fall, and we're planning the release of the full-length record in April later the next year. And so we kind of caught them on their upswing when they were just starting to get on people's radar, and so they came through. And I was, I'd heard this thing. I was like, "This is great. This is going to be an awesome session." And my friend Chris Hirschman filmed it, and he had all these big plans for, let's do a track and everything on tripod. I was like, man, just do it raw, like handheld, get it raw. Let's try to stay out of the way and not make it feel like a big production.
Yeah.
And so I've set the room up, and this is probably the best thing I ever learned from HearYa sessions that I try to apply to my regular record sessions. But having the room dialed in before the band arrives is huge. Like,
oh yeah.
I mean, we were hitting record within 20 minutes of them arriving at the studio. The drums were set up, tuned, mic'd, the amps were in place. I usually would reach out to the band or their management ahead of time and get a stage plot and an input list, so I knew what to expect. And if there were any questions, I could reach out to them. I mean, obviously things change a little bit here or there as they arrive and see, oh, this is a little different than we normally do, whatever. We would just make it as comfortable as possible for them. So they walk in, plug in, and you're making music. And I think it just kind of disarms the band, and they relax. They're like, okay, this guy is here for us. Like he put this much energy into us, and we haven't done anything yet. That I think it's a great practice to try to apply to your, say, regular sessions too. It just makes the band feel special. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's very similar to how I described the Hay Bale studio. We would put a lot of time and effort into the setup beforehand, so that when a band actually walks in, because we had like you said, we had about an hour per band, and we would also record a few songs, but it's just, the recording is as fast as they play them, basically.
Yeah. And that goes, when you look at it in terms of what went into this session, the recording part is like the shortest. It's the setup, and, especially once you start filming, like the lighting and stuff, that takes forever.
Would you give them, was your version similar to mine in that I would mix it on the spot, and what they heard in the headphones was my mix as well. So it was like a feedback loop. Did you do it similarly like that, or would you sort of dial in? Well, you had the wedges, right? So I treated it
like I was making a record, and I would mix it after the fact. And maybe that takes it like away from being, 100% live, but I don't care. Like, I learned so much by doing that. There
were many times I was like, boy, I wish I hadn't screwed up. But like all my mixes, the first verse is always like the vocal takes about halfway to get settled.
Yeah. And that's just how it is. We would sometimes we do a sound check, or like, hey, run a verse and chorus or whatever. And obviously you're recording that, and maybe they just roll right into a song, and it is what it is. like with the Alabama Shakes one, I think they jumped right in and they did like 3 songs, and their manager was late to arrive. She was flying in from Colorado or something. And she's like, wait, you guys didn't do Hold On. And they're like, we've been playing that song every night. We don't really want to do it. And she's like, dude, we're going to AAA radio with that song. That's your single. You're going to play that 600 times in the next year, maybe more. So get used to it. And like,
That's
all right.
funny. That's funny.
And so they cut it, and we're all looking at each other like, oh yeah. And the band, when they finished, I think Brittany looked up and she's like, that was weird. Something was off on that one. And I was like, I don't know. So I just mixed it and I sent it to John Salter at ATO, and he was like, don't do anything with this. Hang on. And he got back to me a couple days later, and he's like, I think we want to use this for their official video. And so we ended up working out a deal, and it was great. You know, it was just a great, I don't know, exposure thing for me to be associated with that band. We honestly just caught lightning in a bottle. Like, I did a decent mix and a good capture, I think. But it was all about that band, you know?
So they say it's all about preparation meets opportunity, you know, where it's like you put in the hard work of getting your studio ready, making sure your console was happening, and then being ready for the session so that when something like that does happen, you capture it. And then, you know, that'll hopefully take your studio and you to one more notch forward, you know, and
totally
your career and all that.
And I should say that was, I think, HearYa session number 100 or something like that.
So you've done a few already.
There was a learning curve coming up to that of a few years, where we had some real dogs in there too.
Now there was another band that you also had in there, Delta Spirit, and they did California, which I recorded the same band, same song. So we were catching the same bands doing the same stuff on the same circuit, you know?
That was they were in town for Lollapalooza. And we had a friend at C3 who was actually, I think, managing them, and he put us in touch, and we got the session happening, and that was a fun time. Like, that was probably similar to your hay bale sessions, you know, where like festival vibe. I mean, we weren't on the grounds at Lollapalooza, but I was within a couple miles of Grant Park, you know, and the bands kind of enjoyed coming someplace else for a couple hours, getting away from the mayhem of that, doing a session. And it was just like a fun weekend because you'd pack a whole bunch of them in. And much like, I'm sure the hay bale thing, you were doing them every couple hours, right?
Yeah, we would do a band every hour, and you know, they'd walk in the door, sound check them in 15 minutes and go like, what's the title of the first song? And then just go, you know, and like I said, there were things that were great about that. And then there were things where later I was like, oh, I wish I could fix that thing I did. But, you know, what I do remember about Delta Spirit, which was fun, is that drummer came and he's like, well, we need a direct input for this pad that I'm using. And then he proceeds to, they did a clever thing where it's like, they didn't play to maybe there was a click, but they weren't playing to a track. It was like the drummer was just hitting the sample over and over and over again.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. If you watch the video of that tune from our session, you can see him. He's like the multi-instrumental guy, not the drummer. I forget his name.
Right.
But he's like pounding on the drum pad to the beat of the song. I think it's just like a sample of maybe a chord change or something, or a chord progression, or I don't know exactly, but it just, so they would send me that track and I would mix it in and it just fills it out nicely.
Yeah. And what's funny is he did the same thing on the session with us. It was all just one hand, like right hand only, I think, hitting it. And like, in such a way that, I mean, that guy must have looked like a lobster by the end of the session, where he's got like one giant claw, you know, and one small one.
Totally. But yeah, that was a fun session. Those guys were just really nice people. And Matt, the singer, is really just fun to be around.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think Woody, one of my partners in HearYa, he took his kids to Lolla that year. And, you know, they were probably like 8 or something like that. And Matt got him up on stage, like watching from the side of the stage. And right before Delta Spirit hits the stage, he runs up to Woody's kid and he's like, dude, you ready? You ready? Gets him all pumped up, and they told me all about it. And it was just one of those memories I'm sure that kid's never going to forget. I mean, I've been on stage a couple of times at those huge festivals, and it's just like amazing to look out and see that kind of an audience.
Oh yeah.
I was never playing. I'm just looking from the side, but I can't imagine for a little kid and to see the lead singer, come up to you and like pump you up right before he goes on stage to 50,000 people. It's got to be pretty cool.
Yeah, indeed. That definitely
Something not going to forget.
Indelible memory.
Yeah.
PreSonus has everything you need for your music or podcast production. Studio One is a great choice for your DAW, whether you are writing songs, creating EDM and pop music, recording bands, mixing, mastering, composing for film, or recording voice and producing a podcast of your own. A flexible sketchpad, chord charts, key recognition, effects pedals, amp simulators, virtual instruments including a killer drum machine, built-in vocal tuning with Melodyne, and 37 fantastic sounding plugins for mixing will allow you to create whatever inspires you. PreSonus provides you everything you need for your studio, from microphone to digital interface to headphones and speakers, so that you can easily set up your home studio for professional production. Get started now with the low-cost Studio One Artist and join PreSonus Sphere for access to all their software, a complete learning library, and creative collaboration in the community at PreSonus, wherever sound takes you. If your goal was to climb Mount Everest, you would hire a Sherpa to guide you to the summit. If you wanted to sail around the world, you would hire a seasoned sea captain for a safe voyage. And if you wanted to try skydiving, you wouldn't just jump out of an airplane without being strapped to an expert, right? So why would you send off your mix for mastering without knowing that it was ready first? Wouldn't it be great to have a professional mastering engineer with a trained ear to guide you through the final stages of mixing? Brian Murphy is your trusted guide at soundporter.com. Home of the iterative mastering process, where you get to interact with a professional mastering engineer who listens to what you want and will give you mix feedback to help you get your mix ready for mastering. Contact Brian now for a free mix review and mastering demo so that you can hear it before you buy it at soundporter.com. So you've worked with a lot of cool bands, and one of the things I appreciate about the music that comes your way is, and what I appreciate about the Midwest too is there's this crossover between, band performances and indie rock, and, everything isn't always like, pop production, New York, LA, Nashville kind of stuff. So there was one of the bands was the record Low, Here to Stay, which I thought was really cool, and it has like this raw, dark, but kind of smooth sound. And I feel like that's also coming from your appreciation of like, I'm recording a band, I'm keeping it. It's like we can appreciate the indie rockness of it, but this quality of tone that we get by using the console and the tape machine and stuff like that really adds up. And I wonder if you want to talk about that session, or just talk about like, finding that balance between a raw sound, but keeping it very hi-fi still.
Well, that record was, that's an important one for me because it was one of the first bands. I did that right after I moved to Chicago from New York. So we're talking like 2005, I think or maybe 2006, we started working together, and we did like a single or an EP or something like that. And we came in, we did the full record that came out in 2007 or 8. And so that was early on for me, and I learned a ton. I didn't have a console at the time. And, my mic selection was limited. I rented a place that I found on Craigslist and set up my studio there. And they were a young, scrappy band with, big ideas and all kinds of stuff. And
nice. It was kind of a home studio vibe that you set up.
It was. I mean, it was in an artist's loft. Those are pretty, like these timber lofts are kind of common around industrial areas of Chicago.
Yeah.
And I'm sure elsewhere. But it was built out by, I forgot the name of the guy. But it was like a hip hop studio or something like that before I got in there. And small control room, decent sized live room, tons of bleed from neighboring trains and bands and stuff like that. But it was my spot, and it was cool. I enjoyed it.
Oh, so that was your first sort of permanent studio location there?
I think so. It was my second.
Nice.
I can tell you about my first, but it's just another sad story. But yeah, working on that record was it was kind of pivotal for me. Like I really got into it, went way farther than, the budget it's told me I should. And
right.
But it was kind of in the trenches together, and it was one of those bonding things. And we had some struggles too, but we're all friends now. And what was really cool is in the quarantine, earlier this year, Robbie, the guitar player in the band, wanted to revisit one of the tracks that they never felt, it's one of the best tracks, but they never felt like we nailed the just the mix and stuff like that. And he wanted to go back, and he's been getting into production and mixing and wanted to remix it. So I had the files. And so he went back and remixed it, and they kind of re-released the record this past year.
Oh, interesting. Is that the version that we're hearing or not?
I think so, yeah. It's not drastically different, but it's like a little more punchy in the drum, like a little more kick and snare, and maybe some elements. We put a lot of bleeps and bloops and stupid, affecting noises in the kind of noise section of that tune of the song Run of the Mill.
Nice.
And I think they pulled some of that stuff out, which is fine.
Well, it also has a great use of vocal doubling, I remember. And I wondered if you wanted to talk a little bit about stuff you've learned about just getting a great vocal double, maybe techniques or methods that you use, or some different approaches.
Well, there's the standard of like do your lead, and then you could do it again on the same mic, but take a step back, so you're getting a slightly different frequency pickup on the mic. So they kind of blend and don't sound exactly the same. Obviously,
what happens when they do sound exactly the same? It
just gets a little, you hear more of the chorusy, phasey kind of, it just sounds a little more artificial. Sometimes it's super cool. It's just a matter of taste, I think. There's no right way with any of this stuff. It's just, what do you like? But I've always felt like the singers feel a little more comfortable if they take a step back, and sing their double, and it sounds slightly different. It helps them hear themselves,
Nice.
In a slightly different way in the headphones. And
is there anything that's smart to do? Any good practices as far as what you're sending them in the headphones, or do you pan voices or any tricks like that?
Sometimes I guess I pan stuff, but I don't always find that handy. I feel like most of the time, a lot of times, I'm asking people to sing with one on and one off, headphone wise. Just putting one against the back of the head. And so if you're panning, that just doesn't work. Or they're
Right, don't pan it to the wrong ear.
It's the wrong side. You're screwed. And so, I generally just try to give them a real basic mix when it comes to that kind of stuff.
And then are you, I guess maybe I'm getting ahead of myself because I had a question of just analog versus Pro Tools for you. Are you often working as Pro Tools as your tape machine, or are you often working with analog tape machine as your tape machine?
Well, these days, I'm more of a mixed bag. But then during the Here to Stay record, that was strictly digital. I didn't have any like tape-based stuff.
Okay. And if you're digital, then it's sort of easier to jump around or something like that, or it's quicker anyway.
Yeah, it definitely is. I think I used the heavy dose of Crane Song Phoenix 2, or it was probably Phoenix 1 then, for like tape sounds and things.
Nice.
I was way into that plugin then, and I still am. But that was, I don't know. I thought that was an amazing plugin for a long time.
That's cool. Do you find it useful to like really zone in on word by word for vocal doubles, or do you just sort of find it more useful to just let somebody kind of sing whole lines and just kind of get back in the groove?
I'm more of a fan of full lines. Like when you got to get in and get words, I feel like it's so hard to know the context. If you're just, I'm not explaining myself well, but if you sing front to back, you can give the whole arc, you can bring it up and down, and where you came from to deliver a louder section. It comes more naturally. When you have to punch in on a section, it's always a little different. Like the emotion just feels different
somehow or something.
Yeah, and especially once you 2 or 3 three punches in or something, they're like, I don't even remember what the verse energy level was like, and I'm punching at the top of the chorus, and it's supposed to feel like a natural progression, but you have to sort of manufacture that or guess. So I feel like long takes, full takes are more beneficial for everybody involved from an emotional capture standpoint.
Well, this may take us to a question that I had about some of the artists that you might be working with where you are in your location too. And there may be times where you're doing a record with somebody who's an artist that's got new musicians in the studio to record with them versus working with a band that plays together regularly. Is that the case? And have you noticed that there's sort of different approaches to those sessions that tend to make them, each of those, more comfortable?
So you're saying like having session musicians come in and play on a singer-songwriter type of thing versus a full band that's already together?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I guess I lean I sort of prefer the full band or letting the artist kind of assemble their group. Sometimes that bites me in the ass and you get stuck with some friend that plays the cello really poorly or something like that. But
it's nice. You're being very nice to drummers by picking on the cello.
But it's, having a session drummer come in is cool too. It's just like a different thing. The good guys can really emotionally invest themselves in the track and do a little homework ahead of time. Sometimes that's not an option.
Yeah.
And so I tend to lean more towards like letting the band kind of develop, or letting the artist cultivate their who they want to have playing on their record. But there's been plenty of times where I've hired a guy, the singer will be like, or the songwriter will be like, hey, can we get a drummer? Do you have a guy you like? And I've got a few people that I'll call. And that works out great. Sometimes the guys really bring it to the next level with some new ideas because they haven't been emotionally like trapped in the song for months leading into the session, and they can just come out with a fresh approach. So that's cool. But
so when you are working on a band, what are some things you've learned about common ways that you can accidentally make a band really uncomfortable in a studio session?
I guess I've been told I have like good bedside manner and I make people feel pretty comfortable most of the time. I did get called out once, maybe in the past year, where I let them know like they needed to be better. It wasn't like coming together. The rhythm section wasn't. And, I may have come on a little strong in that time. And so I kind of checked myself on that. Like, all right, I need to make sure I'm keeping it cool because it is their project. You need to keep them positive and feeling great.
Would this be a situation where the band asks you to produce versus doesn't ask you to produce? Is that something we should be thinking about?
Yeah, it's definitely something you have to be thinking about. I'm not like a big outspoken person where I can't shut my mouth, but I have a pretty good sense of when it's like a good time to throw my 2 cents in to help elevate the situation. And I usually do it in a way that, people are on board with. They usually say, hey man, thanks for the feedback. That really took our song or our recording to a new place.
Yeah.
It's something you really have to feel out. And I think you get that from experience, being in sessions, maybe assisting on sessions and just being that guy in the background and watching how the producer or the engineer that is producing, interacts with the band. You learn those techniques of reading the room.
Okay. What about some of the technical stuff, just like setting up for a session? Maybe we'll flip the question around as far as like stuff that helps a band feel comfortable in the studio if they're not in studios all the time and play better,
Well, getting them in the same room, I think, is the best thing you can possibly do. That's usually not a big deal because most people don't have multiple rooms to put people in. But if a band is inexperienced recording, getting them in the same room close to each other so it feels like making it as much like their rehearsal space as possible, I think. And, once you put people behind glass and you put them in headphones and expect them to play like better than how they normally would, I think that's asking for too much.
Now, would that, so 2 questions. Does that include vocals and how do you make the right choice on that? And 2, in a rehearsal space, somebody also has the amp right next to the drums and it's really loud. Does that include the amps or is it more like the placement of the musicians and where they're standing?
Well, placement of the musicians, getting them close together so they feel like they're, comfortable, like putting people across the room is not always ideal. Amps, again, that comes into the bleed thing like we were talking about before with the piano and the drums. It's obviously the amps are louder, but typically maybe if it's a new band, I'll maybe throw out the idea of no headphones. Like, let's try that and see how it works. We can always add them or bring them into the situation later. But putting the amps in the booths, but with the booths open, so the amp mics are not picking up a lot of the other stuff, but the guys out in the room can still hear their amp without having to have headphones on. I think that's beneficial. And I get, a lot of these, I'm comfortable with a lot of these things because of those HearYa sessions, like the bleed, we just figured out how to make bleed part of the deal.
Yeah.
And be comfortable with it, Now,
if we want to do a no headphone session, are there any things we need to, is there gear we need as far as like, are you going to have monitor wedges out there and what's going to suck and what's going to work pretty well?
Monitor wedges are can be a challenge. I think I've got some of these bigger, like I said, the 12-inch ones that they have a pretty wide throw, which maybe isn't ideal. I also have a couple of these little JBL powered speakers that I use as floor wedges, and they're a little more directional, which I think is a good thing. And they're cheaper too and lighter.
Right.
And so that's one way of doing it.
Now, is there a sonic reason to have it on the floor, or is it just usually that's like where the hell else are you going to put it? So it's on the floor.
You can put it wherever you want. You just want it firing into the null of the microphone. So you could like kind of put a speaker right on the other side of the mic, just pointed at a singer's face. Yeah, like with a hypercardioid or supercardioid, that rejection spot is like 45 degrees off the back of the microphone. And so just slightly to one side or the other, shooting up at one ear of the performer is exactly where you want it, not right behind. On a 58, regular 58, it'd be right behind because that's where the null of the cardioid is. So you just find that best rejection point for the microphone. And I mean, there's still going to be reflections off walls and things like that coming back to the mic. So maybe you put a soft absorptive surface behind the singer or whatever microphone, is there. So any reflection coming off the wall, at least that upper frequency or the mid-range and high frequencies maybe get absorbed by a panel or a blanket. Or does that make sense?
Yeah, so the wedge isn't bouncing off the wall and back into the vocal mic.
Coming back into the vocal mic, yeah.
And then let me see if I just heard you say that right. Did you say that if it's a hypercardioid, then it's better to have your wedge sort of down, angled up towards the back of the mic as opposed to right behind the mic?
Yeah, so I got that when I first bought those Shure Beta 58s. They came with this little like cardboard cutout you would put on the microphone, and it had a little arrow pointing to 45 degrees off axis and
wow
to the back. And it's like, put monitors here. It was like for stage people or something like that. So like learn how to use the microphone or something. And so I did a little homework. I'm like, oh, that's how, if you look at like the pickup pattern of a hypercardioid, there's a little lobe where it picks up directly on the back side of the mic, but 45 degrees to the side of that is the biggest rejection zone.
I like rejective. We can go with rejective.
Rejective.
Yeah.
And the same goes for figure 8 mics. They have even better rejection. If you're coming at from the side, like that's a huge thing for live sessions or live tracking with lots of noise in the room. You can put something in the null and it barely comes into the mic. It's amazing.
I could be wrong on this, but I think I remember reading in the Beatles recording book or the Abbey Road book or whichever one was the really expensive one that they had something called the white elephants, were these big speakers, and they'd wheel them up to you in the session. Now you're in a bigger room, so nothing's bouncing right off a wall, but then you could put the figure 8 in front of that, rejecting the speaker. Yeah. But then two singers could just stand there and you're hearing the sound come right out of a speaker and you overdub into the mic. Yeah. I've never tried that, but I love that idea.
I have tried something similar. I didn't have the white elephant or big elephant or whatever it's called, but I was able to make it work. Like I had one singer a few years ago where we just couldn't get it happening in the headphones. I was like, all right, well, let's try speakers. And we tried the floor wedges and it wasn't working. So I put the speakers up on a stool. So they're basically at ear level, shooting right into the null of a figure 8 pattern. And we got something. There's still a little there just because it is bouncing off the walls, even if they're farther away. But
there's a certain, if you can get the levels right, I mean, we always have to remember that like bleed, or maybe we should remember it like this. Sound problems are only a problem if you hear them in the final mix. You know what I mean? And if anything gets down low enough, then it can get masked and not be a problem anymore. If it blends in right. So like if you've got bleed, if you've got a speaker bleeding into a vocal mic, if it ends up being at the right level in your mix, then it could be that it's not a problem at all.
Yeah.
But then but you have to explore things like, but what happens if I go to compress it a bunch later?
Right.
All of a sudden, maybe I'm making the problem louder, and now I do hear it. And
yeah, it's tricky, and it's just you learn that stuff from experience, I guess, like how far to push compression while tracking when doing something like that. And so you leave yourself a little bit of headroom to work with downstream when you get to mix. But yeah, that's one way of going about it with the speakers in the room.
Well, that's cool. So all right, so maybe doing non-headphone sessions, putting the band close to each other.
And it takes the right kind of singer for that stuff too. Like you obviously can't have a soft-spoken singer. You have to overdub vocals for that. But
yeah. But the nice thing is, if they're soft, they're also not going to bleed onto the other mics if they are.
True. So they could kind of sing anyways, and then
they just won't hear themselves.
Yeah, right. You turn me up.
But a good reminder to all of us is remember that if you then go turn up that vocal mic in the headphone mix, all of a sudden all we hear is trashy everything through that vocal mic. So that can screw up the sound for everybody else. But I guess if they're not in headphones. The secret to a great mix is to start with great source tracks. And this means you need great microphones. JZ Mics in Riga, Latvia brings you the new BB29 Signature Series microphone to help your recordings add clarity and detail to your mixes. At the heart of JZ microphones is the unique Golden Drop capsule design with a lighter, faster diaphragm that delivers great clarity and fidelity without distracting colorations and distortions. The new BB29 microphone has a Class A discrete amplifier circuit, extremely low self-noise, and transformer-coupled output to bring an expensive sound to your studio for an affordable price. JZ offers a 5-year warranty, free shipping to the US, and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Plus, for a limited time, you can use the coupon code ROCKSTARS to get 50% off the BB29 at jzmic.com. The legendary API sound can be described as punchy and bold with a distinct in-your-face presence. For more than 50 years, API Audio has been advancing their design of consoles, mic preamps, compressors, and EQs, but what API founder Saul Walker got perfect in the very beginning were the proprietary op-amp and transformer designs. And today, API still offers the very best for your studio with dedicated rack units for mic pre, EQ, and compression, and consoles from small to large with the Box 1608, 2448, or full-size Legacy Access, and they even introduced the original 500 series lunchbox to studios everywhere. But most importantly of all, no matter which gear you choose from API, you can count on the original op-amps and transformer designs to make sure you always get that legendary API sound. Because the next record you make could be your best record ever. Visit apiaudio.com. Want to record killer drums in your home studio? Rockstars of Drums will show you how to record, edit, and mix pro-sounding drums with a Nashville session drummer in a Grammy-winning studio. Want to start mastering your own records? Rockstars of Mastering walks you through exactly how I mastered my own record using nothing but plugins in PreSonus Studio One. Want to learn how to create a mix that doesn't suck but rocks instead? At Mixmaster Bundle, I show you how to mix using stock and free plugins so that you can have punchy, powerful drums, guitars that rock, bass you can feel, and a mix that is in your face. Plus, it's totally free as my way of saying thanks for listening. Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now and look for the clickable link in the show notes below. Any other thoughts about things that make bands feel comfortable in the studio? Do bands appreciate having, short work hours in the studio? Do they appreciate having sort of no time parameters? Do they appreciate going for it over and over again until they get the take, or any lessons around that would be helpful?
I think it's different with every band as far as number of takes and how hard you push. You just got to feel that out with what seems right. In terms of hours, I tend to try to keep pretty civilized hours, like rolling at 10 o'clock and maybe do a 10-hour day, that sort of thing. We've obviously pushed longer on certain sessions, but I find my ears get tired after that much time. And I let them know. I'm like, hey, listen, this is, my ears get worn out. I need breaks so I can step outside for a minute and just reset the ears. And I think they appreciate that. And they realize, okay, you're not just a machine. You get worn out too. Because after 10 hours of tracking, bands are tired. And, they get a little nostalgic sometimes and want to be like, well, the Stones did it all night long and da-da-da-da. And it's I was like, yeah, they did. But
you're like, do you have any idea how many unusable takes the Stones recorded?
Right. And the amount of drugs that they were using to get through that. It's just not Cool. So, I don't know. I try to keep it civil and like just realistic. After 8 to 10 hours, I feel like people are usually not as productive in the live room as they were on hour 4.
Yeah.
And sometimes you catch a stride. But
another thing is that the stamina to keep playing for hours and hours is something. It's like it's like somebody, a pro athlete who's trained for that can manage that, but somebody who's playing more for fun, you don't realize how quickly you can wipe out and lose your skills.
Yeah, and you start you spend so much energy, putting something down that, and then you hear it the next day, like, oh, that really sucks. Like, why is it so bright?
Right.
And it's just wasted energy, and then you're taxed the next day. So, yeah, just managing your energy and the moment. I think managing the momentum is the key with all of that.
All right, dig it. Well, let's get into some sonic questions here too.
Okay.
How do you get the bass right on a record?
I don't know. I'm still working on that.
When do we ever find out?
Yeah, that's a challenge. I've heard a lot of people say don't EQ too much down there and just use the level adjustment to get it to sit right. And I think there is something to that, because when you start EQing bass, there's a lot of phase relationships that get kind of smeared just to the side of the point of the EQ point you're trying to hit. And it just makes it more, just a little cloudier. And so getting defined bass, I think if you can get the capture right, in phase, if you've got a DI and an amp, that kind of thing with electric bass, get it right up front, and it just seems to sit right. I mean, it's also the player has a huge role in that too. So. Yeah. And bass in the mix, I don't know if you're referring to bass, bass guitar, or if you're referring to
bass everywhere. So
yeah,
I agree with you. If there's a bass guitar on it, that may be the bass in your mix,
Yeah.
But so if I agree, also we're all going to agree on all this stuff, but the player, the hands of the player, critical, right? So what are some things that help a bass player hear what they're doing properly so that they can put the right hands on a bass?
Taking the time to come listen after a couple takes. You get a lot of bands that come in the studio, maybe they're on a tight budget, and they want to move fast. So we want to knock out X amount of songs in a day. And you're like, okay, it's going to be a lot of work. And they don't want to take the time to come in and listen back. And so let's say you've got a bass player that's getting all clacky and, doing stuff that you really don't want, but they have no idea. They're just not hearing it. You got to bring them in and listen. And you got to encourage them that this is part of recording is listening to your recording in the moment, in between takes. And so I feel like I got to have that fight more often than you think you would, to get them to just come in and listen, because they just want to pound stuff out. And,
have you noticed that bass players, when they're, they can lose their reference point a little bit, and they can start playing bass quite differently in headphones, for example, than they would have if they were just sitting next to their bass amp playing?
Yeah. Well, bass is such a feeling too. When you're standing next to an amp, it's just like vibrating the room and the floor, and it's headphones are a completely different animal. They don't have the same impact that way. There's a lot more. I mean, they can be more revealing on that clackier high-end stuff, but it's I don't have any real tricks for how to solve that type of problem. It's just about convincing them to come listen, I think, is the best I can say there.
Yeah. I have noticed that I have a variety of headphones here, and I have to remind myself that each of those headphones sounds really different. And some headphones actually sound better for the bass, like if I'm paying attention, if I'm careful and I go check, it's like, oh no, if you're playing bass, you might enjoy this pair of headphones instead of that pair.
Right.
Same thing for guitar,
yes. Yeah. I have headphones that I give to the bass player first I have a bunch of those Sennheiser H280s or something like that. Mm-hmm. I feel like the bass is kind of lame in those. And in general, I don't really like those headphones much anymore, but I have a bunch of them, unfortunately. But I've been using some of the audio. I've got a pair of Audio Technicas that, and I forget the model number, maybe MX50 or something like that. They have a pretty good low frequency reproduction, and the Shure 840s, I think, have I felt like a pretty solid low frequency reproduction. I have a pair of headphones that I keep in the control room that if they didn't cost as much, I would let the bands use them. I'd buy a bunch of pairs, but like $300
I know exactly what you mean.
Just like, man, I know these are going to end up on the floor, blah, blah, blah.
They're going to step over. They're going to roll they're going to put the chair down on the cable and crunch it,
Right. But if somebody needs a good set of headphones that I feel are for $350, the low end on them is nuts. It's not hyped. It's flat and it goes deep, deep. The Phonon SMB02, small company out of Japan.
Cool.
But I think their headphones are top notch for the money.
How do you spell Phonon? Is it PH?
Almost like phono player, PHONON. Okay,
say it again one more time. I'm writing it down. Phonon.
PHONON.
Oh, right. But what was the model?
Oh, SMB-02.
SMB-02. Man, you're good with them numbers, dude.
Oh, yeah. That's what my wife says when Anthony comes over and we're hanging out. She's like, you guys talk like a bunch of dorks. Like it's all 1176 and 1073 and BA6A and whatever. She's like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, everybody probably has experienced that time. If they got a friend who likes what they do too, and they've got a significant other, they probably sat at a table and had somebody go, "No gear talk."
Yeah. Yeah.
All you have to do is just go hang out with like a couple of doctors or something and listen to them talking for a second and be like, oh my God, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. It makes you feel a little more normal.
Okay, cool. So other thoughts about that. I don't have this, but I'm really fascinated by some of the companies that make things like, those vibrator things that'll go in the bottom of a seat so a bass player can sit on it.
I've heard of that.
There's a well-known bass player here, an A-list session player, a guy named Michael Rhodes. And when he came and did a session that I was engineering many years ago, he showed up with it was a box that had like a single 10-inch or 12-inch speaker in it. And it was a box with wheels on it. So it was a seat height. And you lifted the lid and it had a mic in it that was pointed at the speaker. And then you closed the seat. So it was isolated, but it was under his butt and he sat on it while he was recording bass. And I thought that was pretty genius, so you could feel the bass on the sessions just sitting next to a drum.
I imagine it works. I think they have something like that for a drummer too, don't they? Like a sub seat for the kick.
Yep. And then there's...
You really feel like you're on stage?
There's things called the sub pack, I know is like this body vest you wear, and some people use them for mixing. I haven't tried all these yet, but Rockstars, if you have, drop a comment in and let us know which one's your favorite.
Be curious to hear how those are working out. Like if somebody's used one.
I don't know. I mean, it'd be cool to feel the bass when you're sitting out there and have, total isolation, do a direct bass, but really feel it next to the drums.
Would you hear the vibration of it though? Kind of like you hear your cell phone sitting in your console?
Yeah, good question. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like that hoopty trunk, rolling down the street. It's like vibrating.
Like the new Billie Eilish record.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. So let's see. Some other artists you've worked with, the Claudettes, Bad Babe, Losing Touch, has an awesome punchy, bright piano in it. And I wondered, and that might have been your upright, but I wonder if you want to talk more about any of that stuff.
That was actually the Grand, the C7.
Oh, cool.
John Iguana playing that. And we did that record October of 18. I think it just came out this year. A little bit of delay in the release, but great record. Ted Hutt produced that. That was fun. That was the first time I got to work with him. I think he's been on your podcast.
Yeah. He was awesome.
So yeah, he came in and produced, I engineered, and then he took it back to LA and mixed it. And that was, I hadn't done a whole lot of that where I was like engineering for other producers. And it was really reassuring. I was kind of nervous, and I was, like, oh, they're taking it back to LA and they're going to, mix it at a fancy studio. I think they've mixed it at King Size out there on the Neve.
Oh, cool.
And I was just, you're always feeling a little insecure being in Chicago, knowing your stuff's going back to Nashville or LA or, big major market places. Right. And I was pleasantly reassured that we'd get good sounds here. They're like, man, that was so easy to mix. Like, your sounds are great. So,
that's awesome.
Thank you, sir. I'll take that. And Ted came back to do another thing later because we had a great experience working together.
So what do you remember about recording that piano?
What do we do?
It's very
I want to
bright
say,
and present. It was like right there. I felt like it almost sounded like a tack piano or
I
something.
think it was KM86 on that. Pair of KM86s.
Small diaphragms?
Yeah, they're kind of like a KM84, but they have two capsules back to back, and they it's multi-pattern. I think they were a very popular Motown mic. They had like 30 of them over there. And I think that's also the piano mic on Dark Side of the Moon. So anyways, very versatile, great sounding mic. Most of that is Johnny's playing.
But where would you position the mic to get a sound where you're really hearing the attack of the notes?
Closer to the hammer, I believe. We probably, we probably did kind of a midway, actually, because I tend to not like it when it's right on top of the hammers. It's just a little too much. So I think we were maybe further back on the middle of the strings, maybe 10 inches up, whatever the lid would allow. So the lid was open, but we've been blanketed the side of the grand piano.
Right. The lid's not like, you didn't take the lid off. It's not open.
No, we don't
like
have
a
like
90
the
degree.
John,
Yeah.
or what studio did that, where there's like the cap that comes down over the top of the piano. I don't
like a whole lid, like a whole.
Yeah, it's like this lid that goes like 3 feet in the air. And so you can position mics inside there.
Oh,
but
that's cool.
I don't have that. So yeah, we blanketed the sides, and so I'll usually position the mic somewhere in the, I don't want it too close to the lid, because then you're getting some really close reflections.
Right.
And so it's kind of you have to sort of listen and base it on what's being played. If he's doing a lot of deep stuff and a lot of high stuff, you got to cover a lot of ground, but you don't want to leave a hole in the middle.
So which means that implies you're probably using a pair of mics, right?
Yes, it was a pair of mics. Sorry I didn't make that clear.
It's all right. There's just so many ways to record piano. That's why I like digging into this question. It's a lot like a drum set. You can't take it for granted.
Yeah, I'm all over the place with piano. But so that was like a very bright, like he's got a, I don't know what you call the style, but it's busy and intricate, and we wanted to capture the detail of what he was doing. Whereas, other times when you're recording a grand piano, you want big and warm and maybe not so much pointy detail. And
what would be some choices for going that opposite direction? For
that, we just did this last week, and I started with a space pair of Coles, one kind of down at what I call the heel of the piano, like the far end, and then one up by the toes. And I didn't really like that. It was something was missing. Even though I was down by the low end, I was not getting low end. And I found that taking two Coles, putting them in Bloomline, just, I don't know, kind of looking over the edge of the piano, maybe a foot up above the edge, I get the best low end response. And I think that has a lot to do with phase. With those mics being so close together, they just behave, the phase coherency is tighter.
And those would have been right in the arch of the foot. By the way, I've never heard anybody do the foot reference on a piano. That's great.
If you look at it, it's kind of like a foot, isn't it? Like the heel, like where your big toe is kind of where the high strings would be. So kind of like your right foot. So yeah, it's kind of like at the curve. It's hard to describe exactly, but it's midway basically. And one is looking down towards, the heel, and the other is looking towards, probably a little more towards the hammers on the high strings.
Yeah.
And just in your typical Bloomline pair. And I just found that is a great, warm, present, not too roomy. Gets a little room because of the backside of the figure eights, but that's kind of my go-to now. And if I'm not using the Coles, I have this pair of, or this Steger ribbon mic.
Right. That's Nashville mic.
Yeah,
right?
Matt Steger, or I don't know how you say his name, but look it up. He's got great mics, good price point. So I have a stereo ribbon of his, and it works great in that capacity on the piano. And I like it on overheads too sometimes for darker.
That's cool. Would you try that with a condenser Bloomline as well?
The yeah, I've done that with the KM86s and figure eight, doing a Bloomline that way. And those condensers have a great low frequency response, I believe in the figure eight pattern. And so that's nice and full.
Yeah, I've got this new mic here, the Vanguard V44S, which is a stereo mic. kind of like a C24, and it sounds pretty cool. So I'll have to try that out.
Yeah, stereo mics were something, and it took me a long time to get into them. And now I'm like, God, they make it so easy. And you don't always have to use them in stereo. You can fold it to mono or just use one side or whatever you want. But there's nothing that beats being able to get the capsules that close together.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also a pain in the ass trying to do with multiple mic stands that won't stay
especially in a piano. In a heavy Coles or something, it's like sagging on the stand. And you got to invest in more expensive mic stands, all that stuff.
Do you feel like the time you spent watching YouTube videos, trying out mix tricks, and tweaking version after version of your mixes has gotten you nowhere? Have you been looking for a simple, straightforward, step-by-step process for creating a pro mix that won't take years to learn? What if you could have a Grammy-winning mix engineer who understood all your mixing struggles and could coach you through them? If you struggle with any of these questions, then the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass is just for you. Now you can discover the proven step-by-step mix system from Grammy-winning mixer Craig Alvin for consistently creating a pro-quality mix from your home studio that will sound amazing everywhere. Listen, I appreciate you listening to this podcast, and I know you're trying to make your best record ever. But when you're ready to take your mixes to Grammy-winning quality, then you're ready for UltimateMixingMasterclass.com. So what if I back up a second, we were talking about those smaller mics inside the piano as a space pair for the brighter sound. One thing I wanted to ask you is, would those mics be pointed? Does it matter if we're sort of pointing and, maybe we're moved back into the soundboard, but then do we angle towards the hammers again? Or is it, do we point it straight up and down? Or does that not matter?
I've done it different ways. Sometimes I'm looking straight down towards the soundboard. The 86s have a pretty wide cardioid pickup. I've used them in Omni in that position as well. But you can also have them looking at the hammers. There's no, it's like putting a mic in front of a guitar amp. You just got to go with what's sounding right at the time.
Yeah. So
as a starting point, I think, you could have them looking at the hammers and see how that sounds.
I'm thinking of a good hack, which I think I've mentioned before, but we'll try it again because I think I need to mention it like 5 times before I even try it myself. But take an iPhone and set it up to videotape yourself doing the mic placement, and then just roll Pro Tools and have somebody sit down at the piano, and then just go around there and move it around in all these different spots, and then put your video back with the session and listen to it because that's one. That could be a nice trick for sort of seeing what you did and hearing it in the control room afterwards. Because I know that gets frustrating sometimes. We're like, how can I be in there listening and out here moving the mic at the same time?
Right. You just made me think of a mic positioning thing that I saw using KM86s. And you could probably use any, condenser mic that you had. But it was for I can't remember the guy's name, but he runs that studio called The Church. I think it's in London. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. It's where like Adele's done her records and stuff like that. He did 21 or 5. I forget what her albums are called, but They were talking about the piano sound and how they got it. And basically he had KM86s taped to the bracing, the brass or gold bracing that runs on top of, kind of above the strings.
Right.
In a piano. And he had them just taped to the side. And they got an amazing piano sound. that was a big hit. It didn't suck, So that inspired a different placement as well. Like try that. And I've done that and it worked nicely.
Another one I've done, which I haven't done in a while, but if you can figure out how to tape a pair of PZMs to the inside of the lid, you can close the lid.
Yeah.
And get a little bit of isolation that way. You could even wrap the piano in blankets and stuff. That could be a fun thing to experiment with too. We
did that one time on a record at Electrical Audio on Steve Steinway. He had there in Studio A, and I was the assistant side. He was like, "What if we took some lavalier mics or something and taped them to the inside of the lid?" And we did it, and it actually worked nicely. I haven't done it, and it's been 12 years.
Yeah,
it worked at the time.
Well, cool, man. Well, we're rolling up in the end here, so let me just ask you a couple of quick questions on our way out. Let's talk. Let me hit you with some studio questions since you own a studio and you're keeping it going. Anything about organizational stuff you want to share? Any tips about organizing your studio or keeping things going? I know we talked a little bit about that, but anything else come to mind?
Yeah, I don't have any like strong software recommendations. Like, get this; it'll help you keep your schedule and your books all in line. I mean, I use QuickBooks. Dropbox is a huge help for me just because I can keep everything in one place and access it from my phone when I'm not at the studio or when I'm not in front of an office computer or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I can send rental agreements to people from my phone or invoice if I had to from my phone, by accessing stuff that I have in the Dropbox. And of course, with the mixing side of things, whenever I print a mix, it goes into that band's Dropbox folder. And then I have it to listen to. I just save it to my phone, you start or whatever, and it downloads it so it's on the phone so I can hear it in the car or wherever I am at when I'm, if I need to think about it or make some tweaks. And then once I'm like, okay, I'm cool with it, then I could just shoot a quick email with a link to my client and it just lives there.
Now, do you, to get it into Dropbox, do you actually tell Pro Tools to bounce it directly to that folder, or do you just sort of swipe it over when you're done
I just
mixing?
Swipe it over. That way Dropbox isn't getting a bunch of random stuff and constantly chattering,
Right.
So it's just like a controlled flow over to Dropbox. But the downside of that is I forget that I have stuff in there, and once in a while I have to go back. I'm like, oh, that's been there for 11 years. Maybe I should pull that out. They don't need that rough mix anymore. I don't know if Dropbox has been around that long, but you know what I mean. That as far as organizational tools, I don't have a ton. I'm not that organized, but
and then what about just physically? You mentioned the mic locker. You said like a tool cabinet. I think one thing we could remember could be useful is the same thing you would see in an auto shop. The roll around tool cabinet with the wheels.
Right, that'd be
something
cool.
like that could be good too.
Yeah, I've thought about that. And I've seen other studios that have them. And we used to have at the Hit Factory, you had like a cart that you would roll out in the live room. Problem with my studio is it's not so big that it makes it that it's almost easier to walk 10 feet and grab the mic than it is to wheel a cart over there.
Yeah.
But, keeping all your cables in one spot, the obvious stuff, like things you need to get to. Drum treatment tools are all in one drawer. All the percussion is in one bin. All the,
Now, do you find it really useful to label all these bins and these hangers on the wall, or is it more like you and whoever else works with you just sort of gets to know where things belong?
Yeah, I label the mic drawer, but like percussion and stuff, I've got like the percussion that you strike, and percussion that you shake, and percussion or little instruments that you blow. So we've got blow, strike, and shake.
Nice.
But people still don't see those labels and like what's in what. Things end up the wrong box. Once in a while, we'll go through and straighten that out. But
I do have a tip that I'm trying right here. So I have a cabinet. I actually have my dad's old chest of drawers, and it's this beautiful piece of furniture. And I just fill it with mics. But the problem is they've gotten so full now, the mics are just sitting on top of each other without their own, safe space. And the quickest solution I came up with was I just ordered a whole bunch of these little bubble wrap sleeves on Amazon.
That works.
So now I can just slide a mic in that and just at least put it in the drawer and know it's not getting dinged up by the other mics.
Yeah, that's totally smart. I just went and got some colored kind of egg crate foam. I think I got it on Amazon or something, and just cut it to fit each drawer. And so everything kind of keeps it from rolling around so much because it's kind of an irregular surface. But that helps. It looks nice. It's clean.
Cool. And then I guess another one that I got, but I didn't end up using so much is it's this rubber screen looking stuff that they make. You're supposed to cut it out and put it on a shelf and then put your kitchen glasses on it.
Oh, yeah.
And you can put that in a drawer too. And it would at least be like a soft thing that'll keep them from bumping around a little bit too.
Right.
Well, cool. Let's hit you up with the final question. This one is our favorite one. We're going to take the Wayback Studio machine, and you're going to go back in time and find young Stephen ready to rock. And you say, listen, dude, here's the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the studio yourself one day. What advice would you like to go back and give yourself if you could go way back and do that?
That's a tough one. I thought about this because I saw your notes. I think I would tell myself, be confident with who you are and where you came from. Like, moving to New York was a challenge that I took on, but I was growing up in a smaller town in the Midwest. I was kind of insecure, and I didn't embrace every opportunity in New York the way I wish I would have. And moving further into my life, like I've grown into my own skin. I'm kind of a late bloomer, and I would just tell myself to be proud of everything that I've done in my life has shaped me, and my story is a unique one, just like yours is unique, and everybody's is, and we should all be proud of that. And it's so easy to get caught up in trying to fit in and be cool and do the things you think you're supposed to be to get through or to get forward in your career.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I just wish I would have embraced a little more of, who I am way back then.
It's easy to feel like we're supposed to be somebody else that we see or do things the way they do it or whatever.
Right. And your unique story is many times your greatest asset,
Yeah, totally.
And it's easy to get caught up and not realize that. So I don't. That doesn't relate a lot to the studio, but it relates to life, I guess. And so that's advice I'd give myself.
No, I think it does. I think it relates to the studio. It relates to making music. It relates to how you just carry yourself in a pressure situation.
Yeah.
Trust yourself.
Yeah, it's also when you're coming up, you got to trust yourself. You got to also know to shut up and just listen and absorb. I've always been good at that side. Like I speak up a lot more now, but coming up, I was good in the assistant way, and then I was definitely the fly on the wall, just soaking it up.
Yeah,
and that was great. I got to see some amazing things. And
so you didn't get fired from Hit Factory for talking too much?
No, I didn't. I don't know what it was really. I think it was
somebody else, man. Somebody stabbed you in the back.
Somebody else knew somebody, and they were just probably working somebody else into it was a pretty high turnover situation there.
Yeah.
It was tough on the ego, but man, it was great. I got to be in the room with some amazing people there that changed the face of music, before I was around. And so that was amazing. And I have no regrets about that.
Awesome, man. Well, dude, it's been a super fun hang to just be here on the podcast with you. Let the rock stars know where can they go check out Shirk Studios and learn more about it. What do you want them to go?
Okay, well,
online?
My website, shirkmusic.com. That's shirkmusic.com. One day maybe we'll get shirkstudios.com, but currently it's some guy's watercolor collection. I've been talking to him, Mike Shirk. Right. We're working on that. But so you can find me at shirkmusic.com or Instagram, Shirk Studios, plural.
Cool.
Or Facebook, I think, is Shirk Studios as well. I'm not as active on my Facebook studio page, but those are the spots. Hit me up. Happy to answer any questions about how we do things here, or if I can be of any assistance to you on a project, hit me.
Awesome, dude. Well, I'm looking forward to us all getting back out of quarantine so that we can do another amazing mixing hangout there.
That would be fantastic,
or recording,
man.
Or whatever. Rockstars, in fact, if you're listening to this and you go check out the site, let us know what kind of thing you want us to do at Shirk Studios. Do you want us to do a mixing clinic there next? Do you want to do some kind of tracking thing? What would be a lot of fun? Because that was super fun to do that with Anthony and you. And even just going out to lunch was really fun. It's a great neighborhood.
Yeah. It's a good spot up here, and it's great to have you guys that time. Hope we can do it again someday.
All right, dude. Look forward to seeing you again in person, and we'll talk soon.
You as well. Thanks, man. It's been a pleasure.
All right, cheers.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. And if you want more free content from Recording Studio Rockstars, all you have to do is go to rsrockstars.com/email. Again, that's rsrockstars.com/email to enter your name and email, and I'll keep you in the loop with articles, videos, podcast updates, and even free gear giveaways for your studio. Just look for the link in the show notes below. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our amazing sponsors who help make this episode possible. OWC, Presonus, API Audio, Isotope, Sound Porter Mastering, JZ Microphones, and Spectra 1964. You will find links to all these wonderful sponsors in our show notes. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio, and they're going to help you make your best record ever. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.